We've talked about this a few times, so we're not going to spend too long here, but in Ephesians chapter 6, Paul is writing and he says to the Ephesians, and you got to wonder why he's writing that. I mean, normally, I'm sure he was inspired by God to write it, but you got to wonder what particularly were the issues in Ephesus that Paul had to write to them in the letter, this particular part of the passage. In Ephesians 6:1 it says, "Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right." As a kid going to Sunday school, this was one of my least favorite scriptures, probably in the Bible. Because this meant that not only did my parents have the right to tell me what to do, but they had divine inspiration and authority behind that. So it was difficult to come up with some lame excuse as to why you weren't doing what you were told. Unless it was something where they were asking you to worship a devil or something, then you would have to be okay. But other than that, there wasn't much that you could say about your parents, what they were asking you to do. And so, children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. And then it says, "Honor thy father and mother," which is the first commandment with promise. And one of the things we've always have been talking about, we will continue to talk about here, at least as long as I'm here. I don't know what happens after I'm gone, but that's here nor there. But is the promises of God are the most important thing for us to understand as we live out the new covenant. Okay? God has given to us promises, exceeding great and precious promises, that by these you might be partaker of the divine nature. You're never going to be a partaker of the divine nature if you don't understand what the exceeding great and precious promises are. Okay? And if you don't battle to see them fulfilled in your life. If you listen to the enemy's lie and say, well, that's not for you, that's not for you, that's not for you, that's for somebody else, that's for somebody who's more spiritual than you, that's for somebody who's been a Christian longer than you. That's the kind of thing he always says to you. That's not for you. You commit too many sins. You're too carnal in your mind. And so, of course, then we continue to walk in a situation where we never move forward in our life. Right? The Bible says, exceeding great and precious promises, that by these you might be partaker of the divine nature. Right? So, here's one. Honor thy father and mother, which is the first commandment with promise. Right? Ephesians 6:2. Honor thy father and mother, which is the first commandment with promise, that it may be well with thee, and thou mayest live long on the earth. It'd be interesting to do a study as to, longevity, as to people dying young and people living long, whether this was one of the most significant contributing factors in that or not. Wouldn't it be interesting to have those statistical things? That might at least speak to your natural mind. One thing we know for sure is the Bible has promised that if we're honoring our fathers and mothers, there is a promise that goes with that, that it may be well with us, and thou mayest live long on this earth. So if you're looking for a way out of here, I guess that verse doesn't really apply to you. But if you're willing to hang on here and see things through. And it's important that we understand, what does that mean? My family came by my house yesterday, my kids, my mom, my sister. They came by yesterday because I have a daughter that has a birthday, my mom has a birthday around this time. And because of that, they decided to lump it all together. I don't know, we're trying to do this energy efficiency thing with family gatherings, right? Oh, can you come on Thursday? We want to have a birthday party. Oh, that doesn't work out. So what we're trying to do is bunch them up, right? It's kind of like the cable provider you have there. You buy them in a bundle, right? You get the bundle plan, and and hopefully it's a little more efficient because you can, have one luncheon for everybody, rather than, oh great, we're gonna go to another party, another journey to the other end of the world kind of thing. And so we had everybody at our place yesterday, and they come by and we get to say our birthday greetings to each other. And, Madison, my granddaughter, had a birthday, and she's so cute. She is so cute. She reminds me of my daughter Kelly. She's so short, so little, so heavy. Seriously, my daughter Madison, when you pick her up, you think that somebody nailed her shoes to the floor because you can't pick her up. You go to grab her, and you forget that how much she weighs. She doesn't look like she weighs a lot. When you go to pick her up, she weighs so much that you'll strain your back picking her up, really, seriously. And my daughter Kelly used to be like that, and we used to laugh because we'd carry her around, and it was no big deal, and somebody else would come along. We'd gotten used to it, right? They'd come along, they'd go grab her, and they'd go, But she's the cutest thing. She has these tons of this jet black hair, and She runs around, but she doesn't want you to play with her. She'll come over and show you things and everything, but she just wants to play. She takes her toys over to the corner, she gets them all out there, and she plays with them. And she was playing with the, you know, the My Little Ponies and things like that. It was just great. You gotta see her sometime, you'd love it. And she's great. And so we got together for this, and we got together for, you know, the family. I don't know if any of them have shown up on Facebook yet. I'm sure they will. The family goofy, let's get together and take a posed picture, and then everybody sticks out their tongue or does something weird. Those are the ones that end up on Facebook. I always say to people, when I go to weddings and stuff, I always say to them about, you know, there's two kinds of pictures in the world, right? And there's the Facebook pictures and the dartboard pictures. So be careful which ones you're taking today. But so we do these things to honor our father and our mother, and birthdays, and honor those things, and those are good things. But what does it really mean to honor someone? Is that what it means? Is to have a little party, to give your dad a gift, and you say, hey Dad, that was great, here's a new keychain, or a baseball cap, or whatever you choose to give them. And I think it goes much deeper than that, but I think the problem with the honoring the father thing is our misunderstanding about fathers. And that comes from some of our failures as fathers and the way we lived out being a father. Now, some of you here, you might say, well, you know, my father was never around at all, so I don't really know what he was like or what he was like. Or you might say, my father, when he was around, he was a miserable guy, and so it was never any fun when he was around. Or you might say, you know, the only thing my father ever did for me was that he went to work every day and paid all the bills. That's what he did. But you know what? A father is supposed to be more than that. So, you know, it's always this kind of thing when we have the hallmark occasions that arrive here for the Sunday service, and that is that there's more to it than honoring your father, because hopefully it's about the father learning to take his place and be a father. You know, we saw the benediction thing that was on the little video there, and that was all about the nature and character of God, about how He goes before us to protect us, how He provides for us, how He demonstrates His love for us. You know, being a real father, and we'll get into Mother's Day again when it comes around, we're not going to spend a lot of time, but being a real father involves a whole lot of things. Now this is where the Bible study thing, where you go into the names and character of God, would be a good time. Okay, we don't pray to, you know, Jehovah Jireh, but Jehovah Jireh, the God who provides for me. But you see, sometimes the attitude we have is that that's all that God is a provider for me. So we bring God our little list, right? Okay, God, I got the checklist going. You ready? I hope you're taking notes, because it's a long one today. And we go through it, right? Oh God, I'm behind in the mortgage payment, and you know the car needs some repairs, and you know, the kids have been giving me a hard time, give me wisdom on how to deal with that, and you go down through the list, and it's like God is, you know, Santa Claus or something, you know, like. And so we have the wrong idea about honoring our fathers because we've had the wrong model of what fathers are. You know, just think about it, that God who gave His only Son. I mean, I don't know of a father who would be as patient as God. People say, oh, God, he's, you know, I'm afraid of God because, you know, he's mad, he gets upset when we do something wrong, you know. But think about it, that thousands of years have unfolded in this story of creation where God has been wooing His children back into fellowship, relationship with Him. And God has been patiently enduring through that. He could have obliterated us and started over, right? He could have just, that's it, I've had it. And sometimes as a dad, that's the way you feel. That's it! It's over! Right? But you know, God isn't like that. I mean, yeah, there are times where there were groups of people that God did that with, but they had gone to the point where it was beyond anything. But God has always kept a remnant, always kept a group of people, always kept it alive, this desire, this passion for the fellowship with creation that He designed in the garden. And so, fathers, as we're in our homes and environment, that needs to be the projection we're projecting to our children, isn't it? That we are the father who, yes, who is the enforcer of the rules ultimately, but who is also the one who is drawing us into a relationship. Now, I have to be honest, my dad and I didn't talk about a lot of things, mainly because my dad wasn't a talker. My mom's a talker. I'm a talker. My dad wasn't a talker. You know, we would sit down at the table after church. We'd go home. We'd sit around the table. And we would do what we did, which was critique. You know, what was wrong with the sermon, or what was great about the sermon, or whatever. Because that's the way we were. And we'd sit around talking. My dad would get up from the table and he'd go and he'd lay it on hardwood floor or the solid floor wherever he couldn't stretch out his back, he'd just go to sleep there. That's what my dad always did. And so the only times I really had conversations with my dad were when I was in trouble. And those kind of conversations usually didn't go well. Or when he needed him and I to fix something, because my dad was capable of fixing almost everything. He said if we could take it apart, well, we can fix it and put it back together again. That was sort of the mentality. And so we would. If it was there and it was broken, that was the first thing, was we're taking it apart, finding what's wrong, putting it back together again. And so we fixed the pump and the tractor and the car and the wash machine and whatever. It had to be fixed. That's just the way it was, and so we fixed it all. But in those conversations, it was more about me handing him things and getting him this and, being part of that. And so, honestly, it wasn't until older in my life that I began to understand so much more about who my father was. Because the limited exposure I had to him, I didn't really understand it. But when I went out and had to do the similar kind of things in my own situation, I began to understand more of when Dad came home from driving, my dad drove a city bus. That's what he did for a living, at least for the later part of my life when I could have that kind of relationship. He had been a farmer before that. And he drove a city bus, but he didn't just drive a city bus. There was a whole bunch of mouths to feed. So he also rolled papers at the Spectator for a while before he went into work. Or he drove school bus, so he would get up in the morning and drive the school bus, and then he would do things around. We had a little farm over in Flamborough where we had a 2-acre garden that everybody thought was a great idea, except for who's going to plow it, who's going to plant it, who's going to weed it, right? So that my dad would go to work and come home, and then you said, well, gee, Dad, how come you don't want to just sit around and play with me? It's like, well, because I'm tired. Because I'm tired. And so we begin to understand that the relationship we had with our dad was at best limited, but it isn't supposed to be that way. We as fathers are supposed to work towards emulating and demonstrating the things that God has given to us. But of course, when we look at God, we see Him wrong because we see the father that we had in the natural, who obviously, no matter how good he was, would fall short of that example, right? And then it goes on, it says, and you fathers provoke not your children to wrath, but bring them up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. There's a key to that. I mean, that's one of the first things is, you know what? Dads, you don't always have to have the answer. You don't always have to be right. Hard for you guys to say that, I know. I'm the dad, I'm right. I said it, that's the way it is. Anybody had a dad sometimes like that? Yeah. It's about bringing them up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. And even when you are right, it's hard for kids to swallow humble pie just like it is for you as a dad to swallow humble pie, and you need to lead somebody away to repent, to ask for forgiveness, to ask for help. And so as we celebrate Father Day, if we're going to honor them, we have to honor them as best we can. My dad, I haven't seen him. I saw him last week. I guess it was last week I went in and saw him. And of course, he knows who I am, but he doesn't really know who I am anymore. And so I go in and I joke with him because my dad was a joker. Now, most of you probably don't know my dad real well, but if you ever do go to see him, don't sit beside him because he might grab your leg. And my dad has these amazingly strong fingers from starting out very young milking the cows. And so when he grabs your leg, he will bring you to tears very quickly, and he won't let go. And I thought it was just me. I thought when I was just a weakling, I thought my dad would grab my leg and it was very painful, and he would do it as a joke and everything, but it was like, But my uncle, who was a sergeant on the police force, came to visit him, and he grabbed his leg, and he was in tears trying to get free from it. So that's the way it is. But that's one of the things about my dad. And so if we're going to honor people, we have to honor them in their strengths and their weaknesses, right? How many people here in the room today are human beings? Good. Well, that sort of clarifies it then, right? Because if we're all human beings, then we're all fallible, right? And if we're all fallible, that means that none of us is perfect, and we shouldn't expect to look at other people as being perfect. I know it's harder when it's your parents. You sort of expect them, you sometimes still look at them like you're 3, and you know what, in reality you're not 3 anymore, so you need to get beyond that. You need to recognize that, well, and they went through their time in life, and they went through circumstances and stuff that you didn't go through, and so you need to understand that. And so the best thing you can do is learn from the things that they taught you that were God-like. Look at your dad and say, what was the thing that my dad did that was God-like? Whether it was consistency, whether it was, whatever it was, right? Maybe it was just that he paid the bills, but even that, God is the provider. And so we look at that as well. And you fathers provoke not your children to wrath, but bring them up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. You ever wonder why it talks about fathers provoking not your children to wrath? I've always wondered why it was the father. It doesn't say anything about the mother not doing that. So I guess there's something in the relationship that the way it works, that there's a tendency for us to be judgmental over our children. I think it has to do with the fact that we have our own failings and frustrations, and so we try to erase them and eradicate them by force from our children's life. Don't be like me, be like you should be. Right? That's sort of the message that comes across, right? Is don't be so lazy, get up and go do something. Which really means, I know I've been adequate in my own life doing the things that I'm supposed to do, but I want you to be better than me. So see it that way. See that there was something in your parents or in your father in particular that wanted you to aspire to levels beyond what he did. And that's certainly in keeping with the nature of God, but not in the approach of God. See, God is always wooing us to something greater, right? The call of God is always, what does it say? Come unto me, all ye that labor. Just like the bench out front. If you go out front after the service, there's a bench out there. And we put on there that scripture so that it's kind of a play on the fact that it's a bench, right? So come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. And so people going like, aha, the bench will give me rest. Absolutely. But the point is that God is the place where we get our rest. God is always causing us to fulfill the mandate that he has for us. Right? He always has our best interest at heart, because that's the whole nature of what love is. But then it goes on, and if you're a father here today, I'm not going to ask you who you are, but if we go down to Ephesians chapter 5, verse 25, it says something that's also important to fathers. It doesn't call them fathers, but obviously if you're a father, this also should apply to you. I mean, I know sometimes it doesn't, because sometimes we don't get married or whatever, but it's talking about that relationship with the significant other person that we had children with. And it says, husbands, love your wives even as Christ loved the church and gave himself for it. Today we live in a world where the whole issue of marriage, if you bring it up, you're going to get all kinds of issues related to it. For the church, it's very important. People say, well, why is it so important for the church, this whole thing with marriage? Well, you know what? It's because of its connection in Ephesians to Christ. Okay? Marriage in the church is not about two people coming together in a loving relationship. That is not what marriage is. Marriage is about two specific individuals coming together into a relationship that represents the relationship of God and his bride, or Christ and the church. When we deviate from the pattern, we are in essence saying we defy God's order and God's plan, and we'll do it our own way. Now, in the world, we should expect that, right? Because in the world, we defy everything. But in the church, we need to come back and take a look at that and say, you know what? There can only be one God. Can't be two gods getting married. There's only one God. And there's only one church. Can't be two churches getting married. It's a God and a church. They are distinct. They are different. They are meant to be together. And so, husbands, it says, love your wives. Love your wives because in the church, the marriage union is representative of the God and the church union. I once had a guy say to me, he said, you know what, I was afraid to get married because I was afraid I'd love my wife too much. He obviously didn't mean that. What he meant is, he was afraid that he would be so obsessed with his wife that he wouldn't do the things that God wanted to do. But you can't love your wife, you can't love anybody too much. Because love isn't a controlling thing. Love is a giving thing. Right? We can't love the people of the world too much. We can love the things of the world too much because, for the same reason as he was talking about, they can draw us out of the proper relationship with God. But you can't love the people too much. Right? Love is a giving thing. You can never give too much. You can never love too much. You can be obsessed. And so he says, even as Christ loved the church and gave himself for it, that he might sanctify it and cleanse it with the washing of water by the word. Sometimes we come into a relationship in marriage, husbands, we sort of think that it's going to be something like you saw in a movie or something. And I think we all come into it like that. I mean, we sort of expect that marriage is going to be like it was in some movie you saw, where, I don't know which one you pattern your life after, but it's not like that at all. It's about recognizing that the other person isn't perfect, even as you aren't perfect. And so you come together not expecting the other person to live up to some artificial idea, but you come into the relationship expecting that together we can figure out that ideal and work it out together. Right? Because if you don't do that, either your life in your marriage will be miserable, or you won't be married very long. Right? I can just tell you that that's the way it is. Because you see, when we come together, we have to say, my commitment is to this person, not the ideal expectation I have of this person. And so together, right, we will talk about what's wrong. We will talk about what is not working, and we will find solutions to work it out. Right? That's what love is. Love is a commitment. It isn't a feeling. Right? I went into a lot of relationships before I got married based on feelings. And the feelings didn't last too long. Because the feeling you have is for this person that misrepresents themselves a certain way until you get to know them. And we all do that. We all misrepresent, not maybe intentionally, but we all misrepresent who we are until we're into a relationship where we can't act that well 24/7. And so the real us eventually shows up on the scene in all its wonder, and now we have problems. Right? That he might sanctify it and cleanse it with the washing of water by the word. And it's interesting that the ideal or the cleansing agent is the word. Right? The cleansing agent is the word. So when you come into a Christian marriage, the idea isn't that, well, this is the way I think it should be. Well, you know what? Who cares what you think it should be? The idea is, what does God say it should be? Right? That he might cleanse it with the water of the word. In the body of Christ, as we submit ourselves to Christ, it doesn't matter what you think. I mean, God is tolerant and patient and everything. He understands you have all kinds of weird ideas. But the reality is, He's bringing you to a place of wholeness. He's bringing you to a place of healing. He's bringing you to a place of completeness. And it will be in line with the Word. Only the Word. He sent His Word and healed them. It's the Word. The Word is the embodiment of Christ. It's the embodiment of God. It is the essence of who He is. Jesus was called the Word, right? And it says that He is the express image of God. And so the purpose for that relationship, the purpose for the relationship of Christ and the church is that Christ is working, the Holy Spirit is working, God is working to purify us and make us worthy of the calling that we have. And in a marriage it's the same, that we... And in a Christian marriage, it's the same. In a worldly marriage, there is no thing that works. I mean, really, there isn't. I mean, you work it out whatever way you do, but if you're not submitted to the Word, it's hard. But in Christian church, it's the Word. What does the Word say? What does the Word say? What does God say? What is God's plan and purpose? And that's what shapes us, and that's what brings us together, and that's what identifies the problem and clarifies the direction, right? That he might present himself a glorious church, not having spot or wrinkle, or any such thing, but that it should be holy and without blemish. So ought men to love their wives even as their own body. He that loveth his wife loveth himself. For no man ever yet hated his own flesh, but nourisheth it and cherisheth it, even as the Lord the church. For we are members of his body, of his flesh, and of his bones. For this cause shall a man leave his father and mother, and shall be joined unto his wife, and they two shall be one flesh. You know, we do these marriage ceremonies, and people are always afraid. We come to that part that says, do we have to put that in there? I said, what? You know where it says, if anybody knows of any reason, I said, you don't have to worry. Well, I'm worried. I said, well, why are you worried? Because somebody might say, I said, no, it means any legal reason. Legal reason. We don't care what people think. It's if anybody knows of any legal reason why these two may not be joined. Oh, I thought so-and-so was going to stand up and say, what up? I said, no, we just tell them to sit down. They had their chance. You know? And here it's the same. We have this idea in the church that we get married for eternity. You don't get married for eternity. Nobody is married in heaven. Now that's shocking revelation to some of you, but it's the realities. We are married for this life. That's why it's till death do we part. That's why it says that the two shall become one flesh, not one spirit. Oh, I can't do that. I have to surrender my spirit to my husband, or I have to, I can't do that because my... No. Let's not get into some weird, kooky, metaphysical concept that's not in the Bible. It's not like that. We come together as a family unit, one flesh. We live in one house. We have one set of bills. We live together in harmony, that kind of thing. We take care of each other's needs. All that kind of stuff. But we're still responsible individually before God. Okay? It's one flesh. This is a great mystery. And then he says this, but I speak concerning Christ and the church. So much of our life is connected with that thing when we're Christians. We don't even understand how much of it is connected to that relationship of Christ and the church. I want you to think about it. If we are the church, not just us, but all the believers all over the world, we are the church. And we are that bride that will spend eternity with Christ. Because that's the spiritual union, not the natural marriage that we are particularly. Natural, what we are part of, is only a symbol that speaks of the other one, which is the eternal one. Do you wonder how Christ feels about us? He's that bridegroom who's looking for that bride, who has that twinkle in the eye for him and him only, who has that desire to live in intimacy with him for eternity. So Father's Day has come. There's a lot of things we could talk about, but we're out of time. A couple of things to keep in mind. We have a concept in our world that many men have in this world is we've got to understand that there's more to our responsibility than what it is. A lot of men have the viewpoint that their responsibility as a father is only as the seed sower. That's all I brought to this. I brought the seed of life, and now it's somebody else's responsibility. That is a prevalent thing. Hopefully, that is not a concept that we're allowing to come into the church. It is the father, the husband's job to be someone who is the encourager for development, who is the one that is the inspiration behind drawing other people into a relationship. Now I know our examples are not great. In the natural we have not done well. But that still needs to be the goal that we shoot for. That as a father, to want to be the best father you can. Sometimes relationships in your family, your son and you might not get along, or one of your daughters and you might not get along, but you have to find a way to say, you know what, I as the father have to be the one who attempts to breach the gap. You know, when the prodigal son was a long way off, it says that the father saw him coming and ran to meet him. We can't control that there will be prodigals. We can only control what we will do to bridge the gap. So I encourage you to pray for those people who are fathers. I encourage you to pray if your fathers are still alive for them. And I encourage you to recognize that there are a lot of things that your fathers did, alive or dead, that wasn't godly. Ask for or give forgiveness for that. To help God give you the forgiveness, that you can forgive your father for what he's done. And to learn from the things that he did that was right, recognizing that you also are imperfect.